The autumn rain pattered against my worn raincoat as I hurried down the slick sidewalk, my fingers cramping from clutching my umbrella against the wind. The scent of wet asphalt mixed with the exhaust from passing cars, creating that distinct city smell that always made me feel small. My shoes, sensible black flats I'd bought on clearance last year, were already soaked through, sending chills up my ankles with every step. "Mommy's going to be late, baby," I whispered into my phone, trying to sound cheerful despite the knot in my stomach. "Is Grandma making dinner? Mac and cheese." My 5-year-old daughter Lily's voice was the only warmth in this dreary evening. "With the dinosaur shapes, perfect. Save some for me, okay? I love you, sweetie. Love you too. Bye." I tucked the phone into my purse and quickened my pace. The restaurant where I waited tables was just 2 blocks away, and my shift started in 15 minutes. Being late wasn't an option. Not when Marcus, the manager, had already given me that look last week when I'd asked for a schedule change to attend Lily's parent-teacher conference. Single mothers didn't get the luxury of second chances in jobs like these. The streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over the city, casting long shadows across storefronts. I'd just rounded the corner when I saw him, Ryan, leaning against a parking meter half a block ahead, scrolling through his phone. My heart seized in my chest, and I instinctively stepped back behind the edge of the building. Ryan, my ex, Lily's father, the man who'd walked out when I was 7 months pregnant, only to reappear 3 months ago, demanding to be part of his daughter's life, now that he had a stable job and a new wife who thought having a ready-made family would be so cute. I peered around the corner. He hadn't seen me yet, but he was standing directly on my route to work. My mind raced through options. Crossing the street would make me even later, and the back alley was too dark and unsafe this time of evening. I could text Marcus, but what excuse would I give? Sorry, hiding from my ex who may or may not try to serve me custody papers again. Just then, Ryan looked up from his phone and turned in my direction. I jerked back, pulse hammering in my throat. Had he seen me? The cold brick wall pressed against my back as I tried to steady my breathing. I couldn't deal with him tonight. Not before an 8-hour shift, not when I was already exhausted from staying up late working on Lily's Halloween costume. The restaurant's red neon sign glowed in the distance, taunting me from beyond Ryan's position. I had to get past him somehow. A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb nearby, its engine purring softly against the backdrop of city noise. The windows were tinted dark, but I could make out a silhouette of someone stepping out. A tall figure in what appeared to be an expensive coat. Something about the deliberate way he moved caught my attention. Not hurried like the rest of us always were, but purposeful, as if the world simply adjusted to his pace, rather than the other way around. The man closed the car door, and I glimpsed an elegant watch that caught the streetlight, a brief golden flash against the darkness of his sleeve. A subtle scent drifted my way, something woody and expensive that didn't belong on this worn-down street corner. Inspiration struck me like lightning. Without giving myself time to reconsider, I stepped out from my hiding spot and walked directly toward the stranger, my heart pounding against my ribs. His face came into focus, angular jawline, dark eyes that widened slightly as I approached with clear intent. Before he could speak, I leaned in close. "Please," I whispered urgently. "My ex is over there. Could you just pretend you know me for 10 seconds? I didn't wait for his answer. Ryan had spotted me and was already pushing away from the parking meter, his mouth forming my name. In pure desperation, I did the only thing that might shock Ryan enough to keep him at bay. I stood on my tiptoes, placed my hands on the stranger's solid chest, and pressed my lips against his. The kiss was meant to be quick, just for show. But several things happened at once. The stranger's initial stiffness melted away as his arm snaked around my waist, pulling me closer with a strength that made my breath catch. Ryan called my name, his voice carrying over the sound of passing traffic, and something electric shot through me, from my lips down to my toes, as the stranger tilted his head and deepened what should have been a fleeting touch. When we broke apart, I felt dizzy. The stranger's eyes had darkened, and there was something in them I couldn't quite read. Surprise, certainly, but also something more calculating. His hand remained at the small of my back, warm and steady. "Ella?" Ryan's voice came from just a few feet away now, confusion and annoyance evident in his tone. I turned, still within the circle of the stranger's arm, and feigned surprise. "Oh, Ryan. I didn't see you there." Ryan's gaze shifted between me and the man beside me, his expression souring. "We need to talk about the custody arrangement. You've been dodging my calls." "I'm late for work," I said, hating the slight tremor in my voice. "Whatever it is can wait." I felt the stranger's arm tighten almost imperceptibly around me, and he cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was deeper than I'd expected, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Is there a problem?" The question was simple, but something in his tone made it sound like a warning. Ryan blinked, suddenly seeming to register the cut of the stranger's coat, the Mercedes idling at the curb, and the imposing figure standing a few paces behind us. A broad-shouldered man I hadn't noticed before, with an earpiece and an expressionless face. Ryan took an involuntary step back. No problem," he muttered. "I'll call you tomorrow, Ella." He retreated quickly, shooting glances over his shoulder as he went. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me even as embarrassment crept up my neck in a hot flush. I stepped away from the stranger, immediately missing his warmth in the chilly evening air. "Thank you," I said, not quite able to meet his eyes. "I'm so sorry about that. I don't usually go around kissing random men on the street, I swear." When I finally looked up, I found him studying me with an intensity that made me shiver. A faint smile played at the corner of his mouth. A mouth that, moments ago, had been pressed against mine. "No apology necessary," he said. His gaze lingered on my face for a moment, before dropping to the name tag pinned to my coat. "Ella." The way he said my name sent another shiver through me, this one having nothing to do with the cold. "I'm going to be late," I stammered, gesturing vaguely toward the restaurant. "Thank you again. Really." I turned to go, but his voice stopped me. "Wait." I paused, looking back over my shoulder. He stood perfectly still, the rain seeming to avoid him somehow while the rest of us got drenched. "Perhaps I could come by later, after your shift." It wasn't quite a question. The streetlight caught the side of his face, illuminating features that belonged on a magazine cover, rather than this dreary corner. High cheekbones, dark stubble along his jaw, and eyes that seemed to see right through me. "I don't even know your name," I said, my voice barely audible above the traffic. "Alexander," he replied, "but you can call me Alex." Before I could respond, a car horn blared nearby, startling me. When I looked back, he was already sliding into the back seat of the Mercedes, the door held open by the stone-faced man in the earpiece. The window rolled down just enough for me to see those dark eyes once more. "I'll see you later, Ella." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving me standing in the rain, late for work, and unable to shake the feeling that something momentous had just happened. Something I couldn't take back. I arrived at the restaurant 5 minutes late, breathless and flustered. Marcus gave me a stern look but said nothing as I hurried to clock in and don my apron. Throughout my shift, I moved on autopilot, taking orders and delivering plates while my mind replayed that kiss over and over. What had I been thinking? And worse, what if Alex actually showed up later? I didn't need complications in my life, especially not the kind that arrived in Mercedes with brooding eyes and mysterious accents. By closing time, I'd convinced myself he wouldn't come. Men like him didn't pursue women like me, harried single mothers with perpetual dark circles under their eyes and sensible shoes. The kiss had been a momentary diversion, nothing more. I was wiping down my last table when Marcus called from the front. "Ella, someone asking for you." My heart leapt into my throat as I peered toward the entrance. Through the glass door I could see the black Mercedes parked directly in front, its engine running, exhaust creating clouds in the cold night air. And there, standing just inside the doorway, was Alexander. He'd removed his coat, revealing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly. The restaurant's dim lighting softened his features, but did nothing to diminish the power he radiated simply by standing there. Several of my coworkers had stopped what they were doing to stare, and I couldn't blame them. He looked like he'd walked off a movie set, the kind of man who belonged in penthouses and private clubs, not this neighborhood diner with its cracked vinyl booths. "Ella," he said, his voice carrying across the nearly empty restaurant. "I promised I'd see you later." And just like that, My carefully constructed life, the one where I worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, where I tucked my daughter in every night with stories about princesses who saved themselves, where I kept my head down and my expectations low, began to unravel with the pull of a single thread. I had no idea that the stranger I'd kissed to escape one problem was about to become a far more dangerous entanglement, one that would change everything. "You didn't have to come," I said, my fingers nervously twisting the strap of my purse as we stood near the entrance. The night air rushed in each time the door opened, carrying with it the scent of his cologne, something that smelled like leather and spice and things I couldn't afford. Alex smiled, a subtle curve of his lips that didn't quite reach his eyes. I wanted to. Those 3 simple words hung between us. I'd spent my entire adult life being unwanted, by Ryan when the pregnancy test turned positive, by potential employers when they saw the gap in my resume, by landlords who frowned at the mention of a child. Being wanted, even in this small way, felt unfamiliar. "I'm just heading home," I said, glancing at the clock. It was nearly midnight. "I have to relieve my mother. She watches Lily, my daughter, when I work late shifts." Something flickered across his face at the mention of Lily. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. "Allow me to drive you." It wasn't really a question, and every instinct told me to decline. I knew nothing about this man except that he drove an expensive car, wore clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and kissed like he could read my mind. But it was raining harder now, and the thought of waiting 20 minutes for the bus, then walking 4 blocks from the stop to my apartment, made my already aching feet throb in protest. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Thank you." Outside, the man I'd noticed earlier, the one with the broad shoulders and earpiece, stood beside the car, opening the rear door as we approached. Up close, I could see the subtle bulge of a weapon beneath his jacket, and my steps faltered. Alex noticed, his hand coming to rest lightly at the small of my back. "That's just Victor. Security is a necessary precaution in my line of work." "What exactly is your line of work?" I asked, sliding into the plush leather interior of the car. It smelled new and expensive, with none of the fast food wrappers and forgotten toys that littered the floor of my old Honda. Alex settled beside me, his thigh inches from mine. "Import-export, primarily. Some real estate development." His tone suggested the topic was closed, so I didn't press. I gave Victor my address, watching as he programmed it into the navigation system without comment. The privacy partition rose silently, leaving Alex and me alone in the back seat. Rain streaked the tinted windows, transforming the city lights outside into watery smears of color. "That man at the corner," Alex said after a moment of silence. "The ex. He's Lily's father?" I nodded, surprised he'd made the connection. "Ryan. We were together for 3 years. He left when I was pregnant, and now he's back. He wants partial custody," I said, the words tasting bitter. "After 5 years of nothing, no child support, no birthday cards, nothing, he shows up with a lawyer and a new wife and decides he wants to play daddy." Alex's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Men should take responsibility for their children," he said, his accent becoming more pronounced. "Family is everything." There was something in his voice, a conviction, a hardness, that made me look at him more closely. In the dim interior of the car, shadowed by passing streetlights, he seemed older than I'd initially thought, not in his features, which were undeniably handsome, but in his eyes. They held the weight of someone who'd seen too much. "Do you have children?" I asked, then immediately regretted my prying. A sad smile ghosted across his face. "No, not yet." The car turned onto my street, a row of aging apartment buildings with security bars on the lower windows. I felt a flush of embarrassment as Victor pulled up to my address. The building wasn't the worst in the neighborhood, but the flickering exterior light and graffitied mailboxes were a stark contrast to the luxury of the Mercedes. "This is me," I said unnecessarily, reaching for the door handle. "Wait." Alex's hand covered mine, warm and firm. "Have dinner with me tomorrow." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Dinner?" "Yes, I know a place not far from here. Good food, quiet atmosphere." My mind raced through a dozen practical objections. I had nothing to wear to the kind of restaurant someone like him would frequent. Babysitters were expensive. I had an early shift the next day, but what came out was, "Why?" The question seemed to amuse him, because I'd like to know more about the woman who kissed me on a street corner. Heat rushed to my face. "That was unexpected," he finished for me. "And interesting." "I find you interesting, Ella. No one had found me interesting in a very long time. I was a fixture, a function, a mother to Lily, a daughter to my mom, a waitress to the customers, a tenant to my landlord. Being seen as something more was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I can't," I said reluctantly. "I have Lily, and—" "Bring her." That stopped me short. Most men I'd encountered since becoming a mother treated Lily as an inconvenience at best, an outright deal-breaker at worst. None had ever suggested including her from the start. "You want to have dinner with me and my 5-year-old daughter?" I asked skeptically. Alex nodded, completely serious. "I'd like to meet her. Unless you're uncomfortable with that." I should have been uncomfortable. Everything about this situation should have set off alarm bells. The expensive car, the security guard, the way he'd appeared at my workplace, his interest in my daughter. But there was something in his expression, a sincerity beneath the confidence, that made me hesitate to refuse. "She can be a handful," I warned. "I'm sure she's delightful," he said. And for the first time that night, his smile reached his eyes, like her mother. Before I could process the compliment, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card, pressing it into my palm. It was heavy cardstock, embossed with just his name and a phone number. "Text me your address. I'll pick you both up at 6. Victor was already opening my door, the night air rushing in to break the spell of the car's intimate warmth. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, clutching the business card like a talisman. "Good night, Ella," Alex said, his eyes holding mine for a moment longer than necessary. Then the door closed, and the Mercedes glided away into the rainy night, leaving me with questions that would keep me awake long after my mother left, and Lily's soft snores filled our small apartment. Morning came too quickly, sunshine replacing last night's rain, and illuminating the dust motes dancing in the cramped bedroom I shared with Lily. She was already awake, her small fingers tracing patterns on my cheek. "Mommy, your phone keeps buzzing," she said, her breath smelling of the sugary cereal she must have already helped herself to. I groaned, reaching for my phone on the nightstand. 3 missed calls from work and a text from an unknown number. Looking forward to this evening. Does Lily have any food preferences I should know about? Last night rushed back to me, the kiss, the car ride, the dinner invitation I'd somehow accepted. I sat up quickly, startling Lily. "Who's asking about my food?" she demanded, her brown eyes, so like mine, widening with curiosity. How did I explain this to her, that Mommy had kissed a stranger to avoid Daddy? That the stranger turned out to be the most intriguing man I'd encountered in years? "A new friend," I said carefully. "He invited us to dinner tonight, like a date?" she asked, her nose wrinkling. I brushed her tangled curls back from her forehead. "Like a dinner with a new friend. Would that be okay with you?" She considered this with the solemn thoughtfulness only children can muster. "Will there be dessert?" I laughed, relief washing through me. "I think that can be arranged." The day passed in a blur of routine chaos. Dropping Lily at kindergarten, covering a morning shift at my second job at the convenience store, rushing home to tackle the mountain of laundry that never seemed to diminish. All the while, Alex's business card burned in my pocket, and the unanswered text message haunted my thoughts. What was I doing? Men like him didn't pursue women like me without an agenda. The logical part of my brain constructed various scenarios, none of them favorable. Perhaps he was married, looking for a diversion. Maybe he'd recognized me from somewhere, though I couldn't imagine where our paths would have crossed before. Or worst of all, perhaps this was some elaborate scheme related to Ryan and the custody battle, though that seemed far-fetched even to my paranoid mind. By late afternoon, I'd nearly convinced myself to cancel. Then Lily came home from school, bursting with excitement about meeting Mommy's new friend, and I found myself texting back instead. She loves pasta and hates anything green. "Sorry for the late reply. We'll be ready at 6. His response was immediate. Perfect. At 5:30, I stood before the bathroom mirror, scrutinizing my reflection. I'd chosen my only decent dress, a simple black wrap style I'd bought for job interviews years ago, and applied makeup with a care I rarely bothered with anymore. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. "You look pretty, Mommy," Lily said from the doorway, already dressed in her favorite purple dress and polka dot leggings, an outfit she'd selected after rejecting 3 others. "So do you, sweetie." I knelt to adjust her slightly crooked headband. "Remember what we talked about? Best behavior tonight, okay?" She nodded solemnly. "No singing the poop song, no asking personal questions, and use my inside voice. That's my girl." At precisely 6 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text. "We're outside." My heart skipped as I peered through the window blinds. The black Mercedes was parked directly in front of our building, looking as out of place as a swan in a puddle. Victor stood beside it, scanning the street with practiced vigilance. "Ready?" I asked Lily, offering my hand. She took it, bouncing with excitement. "Ready." We made our way downstairs and out onto the sidewalk, where Victor nodded respectfully and opened the rear door. Alex emerged from the car rather than waiting inside, a courtesy I hadn't expected. He looked even more imposing in daylight, dressed in a navy suit that highlighted the breadth of his shoulders. When his eyes met mine, I felt that same electric current from the night before, a recognition that defied logical explanation. Then his gaze shifted to Lily, and his expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. "You must be Lily," he said, crouching down to her level. "I'm Alex. It's a pleasure to meet you." Lily, usually shy with strangers, particularly men, surprised me by stepping forward confidently. "Are you Mommy's boyfriend?" I felt heat rush to my face, but Alex didn't miss a beat. "I'm a friend who would very much like to take you and your mother to dinner," he replied seriously. "I hear you're a pasta enthusiast." She giggled at the formal phrasing. "I like spaghetti best. Do you? I prefer penne, but I respect your position on the matter." This sent her into another fit of giggles, and just like that, any awkwardness dissolved. Alex straightened, his eyes finding mine with an unspoken question. I nodded, unable to suppress a smile of my own. As we settled into the car, Lily immediately peppered Alex with questions about the vehicle's features, particularly enthralled by the button that controlled the privacy partition. He answered each query with a patience I found both surprising and touching. The restaurant wasn't what I expected. Not some ultra-exclusive establishment in the city center, but a cozy Italian place in a neighborhood adjacent to mine. As we entered, the maitre d' greeted Alex by name, leading us to a corner table partially secluded by a decorative screen. "I come here often," Alex explained, noting my surprise. "The owner is from my homeland." "Where is that?" I asked, realizing how little I knew about him. "Montenegro," he said. "A small country on the Adriatic Sea. I came to America 20 years ago." Before I could ask more, the owner himself appeared, a jovial man with a thick accent who clasped Alex's hand warmly and beamed at Lily and me. Something was exchanged in a language I didn't understand, and the owner's eyes widened slightly as they fixed on me. "Benvenuta alla familia," he said, patting my hand before disappearing toward the kitchen. "What did he say?" I asked as we settled into our seats. Alex looked momentarily discomfited. "A welcome. He's very traditional." The evening progressed with an ease I couldn't have anticipated. Alex ordered for us, after confirming our preferences, and the food that arrived was simply divine, nothing like the Italian-American fare I was accustomed to. Lily was on her best behavior, clearly enchanted by Alex, who treated her with the same respectful attention he showed me. As we shared a dessert, tiramisu that melted on the tongue, I found myself studying him, trying to reconcile the powerful, intimidating figure from last night with the man who was now helping Lily pronounce mascarpone correctly, his deep laugh rumbling when she deliberately mangled the word. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked quietly, when Lily became distracted by the small toy the owner had brought her. "I'm trying to figure you out," I admitted. "Ask me anything," he offered, though something in his expression suggested there would be boundaries to his transparency. I considered my question carefully. "Last night, you said family is everything to you, but you also said you don't have children. I'm wondering about your family." A shadow crossed his face, so brief I might have imagined it. "My parents died when I was young. I was raised by my uncle." He took a sip of his wine. "I have cousins, distant relatives, business associates who have become like family. I'm sorry about your parents, I said, recognizing the familiar contours of loss in his carefully neutral tone. He acknowledged this with a slight nod. It was a long time ago. My mother would have liked you, he added unexpectedly. She valued strength. You have it in abundance. The compliment caught me off guard. Me? I'm barely keeping it together most days, and yet you do, he said, his gaze intense. You provide for your daughter, you stand up to your ex, you work multiple jobs. That is strength, Ella. No one had ever framed my daily struggle as strength before. In my darkest moments, I'd seen it as mere survival, sometimes even failure to provide Lily with the life she deserved, the stability I'd never had. Mommy, I'm sleepy, Lily announced, interrupting the moment as she leaned against my side, her eyes heavy. Alex signaled for the check, which the owner refused with a wave of his hand and another stream of that melodic language. Alex didn't argue, instead slipping what I suspected was a very generous tip to our server. The drive home was quiet, Lily dozing against my shoulder. When we arrived at my building, Alex insisted on escorting us upstairs. Security concerns, he said, though the neighborhood was quiet tonight. At my door, Lily mumbled a sleepy goodnight before I ushered her inside to brush her teeth. When I returned to where Alex waited in the hallway, I found myself suddenly nervous, unsure of the protocol for ending an evening that wasn't quite a date, but felt far more significant than a casual dinner. Thank you, I said simply. For dinner. Lily had a wonderful time, and you? He asked, stepping closer. I did too, I admitted. He reached out slowly, giving me time to step back if I chose, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my cheek, warm and slightly calloused. Not the manicured hands I'd expected from someone of his apparent wealth. I'd like to see you again, he said, his voice low. Both of you. Warning bells sounded in the back of my mind. Too fast, too intense, too good to be true. But I found myself nodding anyway. I'd like that. He leaned down, and I thought he might kiss me again, but instead, his lips brushed my cheek, achingly gentle. Good night, Ella. I watched him walk away, a strange mixture of relief and disappointment swirling in my chest. Only after the sound of his footsteps had faded did I close the door, leaning against it as I tried to make sense of the emotions coursing through me. What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that while Alexander had been exceedingly careful in what he revealed about himself that night, others had been far less discreet. As I tucked Lily into bed and prepared for another day of mundane struggle, a photograph taken by a passerby outside the restaurant was already making its way through channels that would set in motion events beyond my comprehension. The stranger I had impulsively kissed to avoid one danger had unknowingly placed me directly in the path of another, one far more perilous than I could have imagined. 3 days passed before I heard from Alex again. 3 days in which I alternated between scolding myself for acting like a lovesick teenager and checking my phone with embarrassing frequency. When his message finally came, it was brief, but sent my pulse racing. Are you free tomorrow evening? I stared at the text during my break at the convenience store, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I weighed my response. Part of me, the practical, cautious part that had kept Lily and me afloat these past 5 years, whispered warnings. I still knew almost nothing about this man, and what little I did know suggested complexities I wasn't equipped to handle. But another part of me, a part that had been dormant for so long I'd forgotten it existed, craved the electricity of his presence, the way he looked at me like I was something precious, rather than something broken. I work until 5. After that, yes. I typed back, then added, Lily has a play date until 8. His reply was immediate. I'll pick you up at 5:30. Just us this time. Just us. The prospect was both thrilling and terrifying. Dreamy smile you've got there, observed Margot, my 60-something co-worker, as she shuffled past with a stack of cigarette cartons. Must be a man. I slipped my phone into my pocket, embarrassed at being caught. Just making plans with a friend. Margot's penciled eyebrows rose skeptically. Friend, huh? Well, whoever put that look on your face, hold on to him. Been a while since I've seen you looking anything but exhausted. I returned to restocking the cooler, but Margot's words lingered. Had I really become so worn down that a simple spark of happiness was noteworthy? The next evening, I rushed home from work and showered in record time, blow-drying my hair with one hand while applying mascara with the other. Lily watched from her perch on the closed toilet lid, swinging her legs and offering fashion advice. "Wear the blue top," she declared. "Alex will think you look pretty." I paused, mascara wand midair. "Honey, this isn't... Alex and I are just friends." She gave me a look far too knowing for her 5 years. "He looks at you the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book." "Oh, really?" I tried to sound amused rather than flustered. "And how's that?" "Like your magic," she said simply. I had no response for that. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about her upcoming playdate with her friend Emma. As she chattered excitedly, I found myself reaching for the blue top she'd suggested, a silky blouse with a modest neckline that nonetheless made me feel feminine in a way my work uniforms never did. At precisely 5:30, my phone buzzed. This time, there was no sleek Mercedes waiting outside, just Alex himself, standing on the sidewalk in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look more approachable, but no less magnetic. His customary security was nowhere to be seen. "No Victor tonight?" I asked as I approached, suddenly self-conscious. Alex's eyes traveled over me in a way that made my skin warm despite the autumn chill. "I thought we'd be less conspicuous this way." He gestured to a motorcycle parked at the curb, a sleek, expensive-looking model that gleamed under the streetlights. "Do you mind? It's not far." I eyed the motorcycle with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. "I haven't been on one of those since college." He held out a helmet. "I'll drive carefully." 10 minutes later, I found myself clinging to his solid warmth as we weaved through early evening traffic, the vibration of the engine between my thighs, and the rush of wind creating a heady combination. By the time we stopped, I was breathless with exhilaration, my hair wild despite the helmet. We'd arrived at the waterfront, where abandoned warehouses had been converted into trendy lofts and restaurants. Alex led me to what appeared to be a former loading dock, now transformed into an open-air market with food stalls and twinkling lights strung overhead. "I thought you might enjoy something different," he explained, watching my reaction carefully. "It's perfect," I said truthfully. The casual setting was a relief after my anxiety about where someone like him might take me. We wandered among the stalls, sampling street food from a dozen different cultures. Alex seemed to know many of the vendors. Exchanging greetings in various languages, I noticed a pattern. The respect they showed him was more than mere friendliness. There was deference in their manner, a careful attentiveness that suggested his patronage meant more than just business. "How do you know all these people?" I asked as we sat on a bench overlooking the water, sharing a paper cone of crispy churros. He wiped a speck of sugar from his lip. "Many are immigrants who needed help establishing their businesses. My company provided loans, permits, protection." "Protection?" I echoed. Something shuddered in his expression. This area wasn't always safe. There were elements that made it difficult for honest people to operate. Before I could pursue this thread, he changed the subject, asking about my childhood, my dreams before life took its unexpected turns. To my surprise, I found myself telling him things I rarely shared. About my father's abandonment when I was 12, my mother's subsequent struggles with depression, my determination to create a different kind of life for Lily. "And yet here you are," he said quietly, repeating the pattern with a man who abandoned his child. The observation stung with its accuracy. "It's not the same. My mother never fought for child support or tried to maintain contact with my father. I've done everything I can to give Lily stability, including keeping her father away." His tone wasn't accusatory, merely inquiring. I bristled slightly. Ryan chose to stay away for 5 years. He only came back when his new wife decided playing stepmother would be fun. He doesn't know Lily, her favorite color, her nightmares, her allergies. He hasn't earned the right to disrupt her life now. Alex nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "Family should be protected," he said. That same conviction from our first night together coloring his tone. Sometimes that means protecting them from those who would cause harm, even if those people are blood. Something in the way he said it made me wonder about the family he'd mentioned. The uncle who raised him. the cousins he referred to as distant. There was a story there, one etched in the hard lines around his mouth when he spoke of protection. "What about you?" I ventured. "You said your parents died when you were young. Is that why you came to America?" His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Yes. My uncle brought me here after they were killed." "Killed?" The word slipped out before I could stop it. Alex was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the darkening water. When he finally spoke, his voice had a controlled quality that suggested he was choosing his words with extreme care. "There was violence in my country. Political instability. My father was on the wrong side of powerful people." He turned to me, his expression grave. "That's why I understand your instinct to protect Lily. I know what it is to be a child caught in adult conflicts." The raw honesty in his voice made my throat tight. Without thinking, I reached for his hand, twining my fingers with his. His skin was warm despite the cooling night air, and he squeezed gently, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding. We sat like that for a while, the comfortable silence punctuated only by the distant sounds of laughter and music from the market behind us. When he finally spoke again, his voice was lighter. "Tell me about Lily. What makes her laugh? What scares her? I want to know." And so I told him about Lily's boundless energy and fierce opinions, her love of dinosaurs and ballet, her fear of thunderstorms that had her crawling into my bed during summer nights. He listened with genuine interest, sometimes asking questions that revealed his own lack of experience with children, but never made me feel like I was boring him. "She asked about you yesterday," I admitted, as we walked back toward his motorcycle. "She wanted to know when we'd see you again." His expression brightened. "And what did you tell her?" "That I didn't know. That adults have complicated schedules." He stopped walking, turning to face me. "My schedule is not too complicated for the two of you." The intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. "Alex, I paused, gathering my courage. "What is this? Between us?" "Because I need to be careful, for Lily's sake." "What do you want it to be?" he countered, stepping closer. The truth was, I didn't know. The sensible part of me recognized all the warning signs, the speed of our connection, the obvious differences in our worlds, the mysteries he seemed reluctant to explain. But standing there in the gentle glow of the market lights, with the scent of salt water and his cologne mingling in the air between us, sensible was the last thing I wanted to be. I began, but my phone's shrill ring interrupted the moment. Flustered, I fumbled to answer it. Emma's mother's voice came through, sounding apologetic. "Ella, I'm so sorry, but Lily's not feeling well. She says her stomach hurts, and she's asking for you." My maternal instincts immediately overrode everything else. "I'll be right there," I promised, already calculating the fastest route to Emma's house. When I hung up, Alex was already pulling out his phone. "Where is she? I'll have my driver take us." "No, I can grab a ride share." "Ella," his tone brooked no argument. "Your daughter is sick. Let me help." 10 minutes later, we were pulling up to Emma's house in the now familiar Mercedes, Victor at the wheel. I barely waited for the car to stop before jumping out, Alex close behind me. Emma's mother met us at the door, looking relieved. "She's in the bathroom," she explained. She was fine, then suddenly complained about her stomach after dinner. No fever, though. I found Lily curled on the bathroom floor, her small face pale and tear-streaked. "Mommy," she whimpered, reaching for me. "I'm here, baby," I soothed, feeling her forehead. It was cool to the touch, which was a relief. "What hurts?" "My tummy," she moaned. "It's doing flips." I helped her up, murmuring comforting nonsense as I guided her out of the bathroom. In the hallway, I was surprised to find Alex crouched at eye level, his expression one of genuine concern. "Hello, little one," he said gently. "Not feeling well?" Lily shook her head miserably, then unexpectedly reached for him. Without hesitation, Alex scooped her into his arms as if he'd been doing it her entire life. "My mother used to say that stomach aches needed 3 things, he told her as we walked to the car. "Warm tea, a soft blanket, and someone to tell you stories until you fall asleep." Lily rested her head against his shoulder. "What kind of stories?" "Stories about brave little girls who befriend dragons," he said. his accent more pronounced as he settled her into the back seat. My homeland is full of such tales. I watched, a lump forming in my throat, as this man I barely knew cradled my daughter with such natural tenderness. It was disarming, this glimpse of gentleness from someone who otherwise radiated power and control. Back at our apartment, Alex insisted on helping. While I got Lily into her pajamas, he found his way around my tiny kitchen, brewing chamomile tea and locating the crackers I kept for upset stomachs. By the time I emerged from the bedroom, he had arranged a makeshift nest of blankets on the couch and was warming a heating pad in the microwave. "You didn't have to do all this," I said, oddly touched by his efficiency. He shrugged, a gesture too casual for his usual demeanor. "I wanted to help." Lily patted out in her dinosaur pajamas, looking marginally better. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the blanket nest, and she allowed Alex to tuck the heating pad against her middle, while I held the tea for her to sip. "Story now?" she asked him hopefully. And so, in my cramped living room, with my daughter's head pillowed on his lap, Alexander, a man who arrived in a Mercedes with armed security, told a story about a little girl who found a dragon's egg in the mountains of his homeland. His deep voice wove images of mist-shrouded peaks and ancient forests, of brave deeds and loyal friendships. By the time he finished, Lily was asleep, her breathing deep and even. "You're good with her," I said quietly as he gently extricated himself, laying her head on a cushion. "Children are honest," he replied, his voice equally soft. "They see what adults often miss." We moved to the kitchen, where I offered him coffee, the only thing I had that seemed appropriate for an adult guest at this hour. He accepted, leaning against my chipped countertop as I prepared the French press. "Thank you for tonight," I said. "For the date. For helping with Lily. All of it." "Date?" he echoed, one eyebrow lifting. I felt heat rush to my face. It was a date," he confirmed, his mouth curving into a smile that made my heart stutter. "The first of many, I hope." He moved closer, until I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Ella," he said, my name like a caress in his accent. "I should tell you something." The serious tone made me tense. "What is it?" "The night we met wasn't entirely coincidence." I froze, coffee forgotten. "What do you mean?" He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair, the first genuinely nervous gesture I'd seen from him. "I knew who you were. I'd seen you before, at the restaurant where you work. You'd been watching me?" The thought was unsettling. "Not in the way you're thinking," he hastened to add. "I own the building. I was there meeting with the owner about renovations, and I saw you." A faint smile crossed his lips. "You were kind to an elderly couple who couldn't decide on their order, patient, when others would have been frustrated. I remembered the couple, regulars who always took forever to order, then inevitably changed their minds halfway through the meal. So you were, what, planning to approach me?" "I was considering it," he admitted. "Then you approached me instead, in a way I could never have anticipated. I didn't know whether to feel flattered or manipulated. Why are you telling me this now?" He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Because I don't want secrets between us. Not about this." "Are there other secrets I should know about?" I asked, not entirely joking. A shadow crossed his face. "There are aspects of my business that are complicated. Things I don't discuss with anyone who isn't directly involved." The vagueness of his answer should have alarmed me more than it did, but standing there in my kitchen, with Lily sleeping peacefully in the next room, and this enigmatic man looking at me like I was the only thing that mattered, I found it difficult to summon the appropriate caution. "I understand privacy," I said finally. "Everyone has parts of themselves they keep guarded." Relief flickered across his features. "Thank you." He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against my knuckles that sent shivers racing up my arm. "I should go. You both need rest." I walked him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him leave. In the dimly lit hallway, he paused, his eyes searching mine. "Can I see you again tomorrow? Perhaps bring dinner here, for both of you." "Lily would love that," I said. "And so would I." He leaned down, and this time there was no interruption as his lips found mine. Unlike our first kiss, the desperate charade on the street corner, this one was deliberate, unhurried. His hand cradled my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone as if I were something delicate and precious. I melted into him, my fingers clutching the soft material of his sweater. When we broke apart, I was breathless, my heart pounding against my ribs. "Good night, Alex." "Sweet dreams, Ella," he murmured, his accent thicker than usual. I watched him until he disappeared down the stairwell, then closed the door and leaned against it, a ridiculous smile spreading across my face. It lasted until I checked on Lily, who was still sleeping soundly on the couch. As I brushed a curl from her forehead, reality reasserted itself. What was I doing? Falling for a man I barely knew, a man with complicated business and armed security, a man who admitted to watching me before we met. It was reckless, potentially dangerous, and yet, the way he'd cared for Lily tonight, the genuine concern in his eyes, the tenderness of his touch, none of that felt dangerous. It felt like something I'd been missing for longer than I cared to admit. I carried Lily to our shared bedroom, tucking her into her twin bed before climbing into my own. Sleep eluded me as I stared at the ceiling, replaying the evening's events. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that across town, in an elegant penthouse overlooking the city, Alexander was making a phone call that would change everything. "It's confirmed," he said into the phone, his voice stripped of the warmth it held when speaking to me. "Ryan Mercer is meeting with his lawyer tomorrow to finalize the custody filing." A pause as he listened to the response. "No, she doesn't know who he really works for. She thinks it's just her ex being difficult." Another pause. "Yes, I'm sure. I'll handle it personally." He ended the call and moved to the window, staring out at the city lights, his expression hard as granite. "No one threatens what's mine," he murmured to the empty room. "No one." Meanwhile, I drifted to sleep, oblivious to the forces already in motion. Forces that would soon reveal the true nature of the man I was falling for, and the real reason he'd entered my life. Morning sunlight filtered through the threadbare curtains of our bedroom, warming my face as I slowly woke. Lily was already up, her bed empty, and I could hear the muffled sound of cartoons from the living room. For a moment, I simply lay there, savoring the peaceful start to my day off, a rare luxury in my normally hectic life. Then the memories of last night flooded back. Alex's revelation that he'd noticed me before our chance meeting, the way he'd cared for Lily, that kiss that had left me dizzy and wanting more. I touched my lips, half expecting them to still tingle from his touch. My phone chimed with a text message, and I reached for it, smiling when I saw Alex's name. "Good morning. How is Lily feeling?" The simple inquiry warmed me more than it should have. "Much better, thank you. Already up watching cartoons. I'm glad to hear it. Would 6 p.m. work for dinner tonight?" I typed back a confirmation, then forced myself to set the phone aside and start my day. There were errands to run, laundry to finish, and a stack of bills waiting for my attention. The mundane realities that grounded me when Alex's presence threatened to sweep me into a fantasy world. Lily and I spent the morning at the local park, where she seemed fully recovered from last night's stomachache, racing around the playground with her usual boundless energy. I sat on a bench watching her, my mind drifting between practical concerns and daydreams about the evening ahead. "Ella?" I turned at the familiar voice, my stomach immediately knotting. Ryan stood a few feet away, dressed in the business casual attire of his new job as an insurance adjuster, his expression cautiously friendly. "What are you doing here?" I asked, instantly on guard. The park wasn't in his neighborhood. He gestured vaguely. "I was in the area for a client meeting. Thought I might run into you two." His eyes tracked Lily on the swings. "She's gotten taller." "Children do that," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Especially when you haven't seen them for 5 years." Ryan winced but didn't retreat. Instead, he sat beside me on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance. "I deserve that. I deserve worse, actually." He ran a hand through his hair, still the same nervous gesture from when we were together. "I was hoping we could talk about Lily. We have nothing to discuss until I hear from my lawyer." The words came out automatically, a defensive shield I'd constructed after his first attempts to reconnect. "That's just it," he said, his voice lowering. "I'm dropping the custody case." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "What?" "I'm backing off," he continued, No court, no custody battle. I want to be in her life, Ella, on your terms. Whatever you think is best." Suspicion immediately flared. This abrupt about-face didn't align with the aggressive stance he'd taken just a week ago, when he'd threatened to take me for everything if I didn't agree to his custody demands. "What changed?" I asked bluntly. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting around the playground. "I've been doing some thinking about what's best for Lily." He swallowed visibly. "And I got some advice about the situation." "Advice," I repeated flatly. "From whom?" "Just people who know about these things," he said evasively. "Look, the point is, I'm not going to push. I'd like to see her occasionally, maybe take her for ice cream sometimes. But I respect that you're her mother and you know what's best." I studied him, noticing for the first time the subtle signs of stress, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't the same Ryan who had confidently informed me that his new wife would make an excellent stepmother just weeks ago. "Why now?" I pressed. "What's really going on, Ryan?" He stood abruptly. "Nothing's going on. I just realized I was being selfish." His voice had a practiced quality to it, as if he'd rehearsed this conversation. "Think about it, okay? Call me when you're ready to discuss visitation. No pressure, no lawyers." Before I could respond, he walked away, his pace just shy of hurried. I watched him go, bewilderment mingling with cautious relief. This was what I wanted, Ryan backing off his custody demands. But the suddenness of it left me uneasy. Lily raced over, breathless from playing. "Who was that man talking to you, Mommy?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain. She had no memories of Ryan, knew him only as a name and a concept. The father who wasn't there. "Just someone I used to know," I said finally. "Are you hungry? Let's get lunch." Throughout the afternoon, Ryan's strange behavior nagged at me. I tried calling my lawyer, but it was Saturday, and her office was closed. By the time 6 p.m. approached, I had pushed the matter to the back of my mind, focusing instead on getting the apartment presentable for Alex's visit. "Is your friend coming soon?" Lily asked, bouncing on the balls of her feet as I straightened the living room. "Yes, and his name is Alex, remember?" I smiled at her excitement. "He's bringing dinner." "I hope it's pizza," she said fervently. As if summoned by her wish, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Alex standing there, more casually dressed than I'd seen him before in dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, his arms laden with bags that smelled tantalizingly of tomato sauce and cheese. "I was told on good authority that pizza is the proper meal for recovering from stomach aches," he said with a smile that made my heart flutter. Lily squealed with delight, immediately taking one of the smaller bags from him and peeking inside. "Cookies!" she exclaimed. "Mommy, he brought chocolate chip cookies!" Alex stepped inside, his eyes warm as they met mine. "I hope that's all right. I should have asked about dessert." "It's perfect," I assured him, taking some of the bags. "Everything smells wonderful." He leaned down to press a brief kiss to my cheek, his hand lingering at the small of my back. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I blushed, suddenly conscious of my simple jeans and sweater. "It's just casual Saturday clothes." "Nevertheless," he insisted with a smile. Dinner was a lively affair, with Lily commanding much of the conversation, telling Alex elaborate stories about her day at the park and her kindergarten adventures. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly paying attention, not just humoring her. "And then Emma said her dad is taking her to Disney World next summer," Lily was saying, as she picked the pepperoni off her third slice of pizza. "Have you ever been to Disney World, Alex?" He shook his head solemnly. "I have not had that pleasure. Maybe you could come with us someday," she suggested, with the innocent presumptuousness of childhood. "Mommy says we'll go when I'm 7, if we save enough money." I felt heat rush to my face. "Lily, that's—" "I would be honored," Alex interrupted smoothly, his eyes meeting mine over Lily's head. "Though perhaps we should ask your mother if she would want company on such a trip." Lily turned to me expectantly. "Can Alex come with us to Disney, Mommy, please?" Trapped between my daughter's hopeful expression and Alex's carefully neutral one, I fumbled for a response. That's still a long way off, sweetheart. We'll see. Alex smoothly changed the subject, asking Lily about her favorite Disney characters, but the moment lingered in my mind. The casual way he had inserted himself into our future plans, the ease with which Lily had accepted the idea of him joining our little family unit. It was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. After dinner, Lily insisted on showing Alex her collection of stuffed animals, each with its own elaborate backstory. I used the opportunity to clear the table and load the dishwasher, grateful for a moment to collect my thoughts. I was rinsing plates when I felt Alex's presence behind me. His hand settled on my waist, gentle but firm. "She's looking at her Disney book," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Planning our trip in detail, it seems." I turned to face him, finding myself trapped between his body and the counter. "You shouldn't encourage her like that. Disney World, really? Why not?" He reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, his touch sending shivers down my spine. "Is it so hard to imagine us still being in each other's lives 2 years from now?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "Alex, we've known each other for a week. Some things don't require years to recognize," he said, his accent thickening as it often did when he spoke with intensity. "From the moment you kissed me on that street corner, I knew you were different. Special. Because I assaulted you with my lips to avoid my ex?" I tried to joke, uncomfortable with the weight of his words. He didn't smile. "Because you were brave, resourceful, beautiful." His hand cupped my cheek. "I've known many women, Ella. None have affected me the way you do." The sincerity in his voice was almost painful to hear. Part of me wanted to lean into it, to accept the fairy tale he seemed to be offering. But the practical part of me, the part that had survived abandonment and single motherhood and countless disappointments, couldn't surrender so easily. "There's still so much I don't know about you," I said quietly. His expression shuddered slightly. "What do you want to know?" I took a deep breath. "I ran into Ryan today, at the park." If I'd expected surprise, I was disappointed. Alex's face remained carefully neutral. "Your ex? What did he want?" "That's the strange part. He told me he's dropping the custody case, completely backing off." I watched Alex closely as I continued. "He said he received some advice that changed his mind." Something flickered in Alex's eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps, quickly masked. "People can have changes of heart. Ryan doesn't have a heart to change," I countered. "He's been threatening me with lawyers for weeks, and suddenly he's willing to see Lily on my terms? It doesn't make sense." Alex stepped back slightly, creating space between us. Perhaps he realized he was fighting a losing battle. Or perhaps someone convinced him to back off, I said, my suspicion crystallizing as I watched his reaction. "Someone like you." His silence was answer enough. "What did you do, Alex?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did you threaten him? Pay him off?" "I protected what matters to me," he said finally, his tone even but with an underlying steel I hadn't heard before. "You and Lily deserve peace, not harassment from a man who abandoned his responsibilities." A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of the kitchen. "That wasn't your decision to make. You had no right." "He was hurting you," Alex interrupted, his control slipping for the first time since I'd known him. "Using your child as a weapon. Men like that don't respond to reason or legal arguments. They respond to strength." "What exactly did you do?" I pressed, suddenly afraid of the answer. He exhaled slowly, visibly reining himself in. "Nothing violent, if that's what you're worried about. I simply made it clear that pursuing this custody battle would not be in his best interest. And he just believed you? A stranger?" A cold smile touched Alex's lips. "I am not without influence in this city. Your ex-boyfriend recognized my name." The implications of that statement hung in the air between us. I thought about the deference shown to him at the restaurant, the armed security, the way he spoke of protection with such conviction. "Who are you, really?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He held my gaze unflinching. "I am a businessman with interests in many areas. Some of those areas operate in gray zones of the law. My family came to this country with nothing, and we built something substantial, not always by following the rules." Your family? I echoed. The uncle who raised you, he nodded. My uncle made certain decisions after my parents were killed, decisions that shaped our future in this country. I inherited his position when he died 10 years ago. The pieces were clicking into place. His wealth, his power, the fear he seemed to inspire in others. You're not just an import-export, are you? That is one aspect of my business, he said carefully. But no, not just that. Are you... I hesitated, the word feeling absurd even as I said it. Are you in the Mafia? For a moment, I thought he might laugh or dismiss the question. Instead, he sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. That word has certain Hollywood connotations, he said. But yes, I lead an organization that some would categorize that way. We have interests in legitimate businesses throughout the city, but also in enterprises that operate outside conventional laws. I took an involuntary step back, my mind reeling. You're a criminal. I am a man who provides for his people, he corrected, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. Who protects those who rely on him, who ensures that businesses can operate without harassment, that neighborhoods stay safe, that disputes are settled without involving authorities who don't understand our communities. And you what? Shake people down for money? Deal drugs? Kill people? My voice rose slightly before I caught myself, glancing toward the living room where Lily was still engrossed in her book. Alex's expression hardened. I don't deal in drugs or human trafficking. Those are lines I don't cross. As for the rest, he shrugged, the gesture somehow more chilling for its casualness. I do what is necessary to maintain order and respect. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm kitchen. I can't have this in my life, in Lily's life. You know that, right? Pain flashed across his features, quickly masked by resignation. I understand your concern, but Ella, you must know I would never allow any harm to come to either of you. Quite the opposite. My world might be dangerous, but those under my protection are the safest people in this city. Under your protection, I repeated. Is that what we are to you? People to protect? Possessions? No, he said fiercely, stepping forward to grasp my upper arms. You are everything to me, both of you. From the moment I saw you in that restaurant, something in me recognized something in you, and when you kissed me, he broke off, a rueful smile touching his lips. I was lost. The intensity in his eyes was almost frightening. You don't even know me, I whispered. I know enough, he insisted. I know you're strong, loyal, fierce in protecting what you love. I know you work harder than anyone should have to. I know your laugh, your scent, the way you look at your daughter like she's the most precious thing in the world. His thumb brushed my cheek. I know I want to give you everything you've ever been denied. Part of me, a treacherous, yearning part, wanted to lean into his touch, to accept the protection and passion he offered. But the rational part of my brain was screaming warnings. Mommy? Lily's voice broke the tension as she appeared in the kitchen doorway, clutching her Disney book. Can we have cookies now? I stepped away from Alex, forcing a smile. Sure, sweetie, just one, though. It's almost bedtime. As I moved to get the cookies, the doorbell rang. I frowned, not expecting anyone. I'll get it, Alex said, his demeanor instantly shifting to alert wariness. He motioned for me to stay with Lily as he moved toward the door, his posture suddenly reminding me of a predator scenting danger. Through the kitchen doorway, I watched him check the peephole, his body language relaxing slightly before he opened the door. A man in a dark suit stood there, not Victor, but someone with the same watchful demeanor. They spoke in hushed tones, the visitor's expression grave. Whatever news he delivered caused Alex's posture to stiffen, his hand clenching at his side. After a brief exchange, the man left, and Alex closed the door, his face a mask of controlled fury when he turned back toward me. What is it? I asked, instinctively pulling Lily closer to my side. A business matter that requires my attention, he said, his voice carefully modulated. I'm afraid I have to leave. Lily's face fell. But what about cookies and the movie? Alex crouched to her level, his expression softening. I'm sorry, little one. Another time, I promise. He touched her cheek gently. Save a cookie for me, yes? She nodded solemnly, and he straightened, his eyes finding mine over her head. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. We should finish our conversation. The undercurrent in his tone made it clear he was referring to his revelation about his true identity. I nodded numbly, still processing the bombshell he'd dropped. At the door, he hesitated, then leaned in to brush his lips against my temple. "Don't make decisions tonight," he murmured. "Just think, and remember how you feel when we're together." Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hallway as Lily and I stood in the doorway. Through the window, I watched him slide into the back seat of the waiting Mercedes, his face set in hard lines I hadn't seen before. "Is Alex coming back?" Lily asked as I closed the door. I stroked her hair, unsure how to answer. "I don't know, sweetie." That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, turning over everything I'd learned. Alex was not just a mysterious businessman. He was some kind of organized crime boss, a man who operated outside the law, who had enough power to frighten Ryan into dropping his custody claims. I should have been terrified, should have been planning how to extricate myself from his life. Instead, I found myself remembering the tenderness with which he'd held Lily when she was sick, the way he listened to her stories with genuine interest, the passion in his voice when he spoke of protection and family. My phone chimed with a text message, startling me from my thoughts. "You and Lily are safe. I've arranged for someone to watch over your building tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." "Rest well, Ella." I stared at the message, unsure whether to find it comforting or disturbing that he had someone watching over us. Before I could decide how to respond, another text came through. "No matter what you decide about us, know that you will always have my protection. Both of you." That is non-negotiable. The presumption in those words should have angered me. The assumption that we needed his protection, that he had the right to provide it without my consent. Instead, I felt a confusing mixture of irritation and security, like being wrapped in a blanket that was both constraining and warm. I was composing a response when an urgent knock at the door made me jump. It was nearly midnight, too late for casual visitors. Fear spiked through me as I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. What I saw made my blood run cold. 2 uniformed police officers stood in the hallway, their expressions grave. With trembling fingers, I opened the door. "Yes? Ella Mercer?" the female officer asked. "Yes, that's me. I'm Officer Chen. This is Officer Ramirez. May we come in? We need to speak with you about Ryan Mercer." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What about him? Has something happened?" Officer Chen's expression softened slightly. "Ms. Mercer, I'm sorry to inform you that Ryan Mercer was found deceased earlier this evening. His vehicle was involved in what appears to be a single-car accident." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. "Dead? Ryan is dead?" "Yes, ma'am. And we have some questions about his relationship with you, as well as your relationship with Alexander Dragovich." The formal pronunciation of Alex's full name sent a chill through me. As the officers stepped into my apartment, their questions already beginning, my phone buzzed with another incoming text. I glanced down, seeing Alex's name on the screen along with a preview of his message. "Don't speak to anyone until my lawyer arrives. I had nothing to do with..." The rest was cut off, but the implication was clear. As I looked up at the waiting officers, the reality of my situation crashed down around me. Somehow, in the space of a week, I had gone from a struggling single mother to a woman entangled with a man powerful enough to make my ex back off, dangerous enough to warrant police suspicion, and possessive enough to place me under his protection, whether I wanted it or not. And the most frightening part, despite everything, a part of me still yearned for his touch, still responded to the memory of his voice, still wondered if the connection between us was worth the danger it clearly represented. "Ms. Mercer?" Officer Chen prompted. "Are you ready to answer some questions?" I took a deep breath, glancing toward the bedroom where Lily slept peacefully, unaware that her father, a man she'd never really known, was gone forever, and that the man she'd so quickly embraced might be responsible. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'll tell you what I know." Dawn was breaking as the police finally left my apartment. I stood at the window, watching their patrol car pull away, exhaustion and shock making my limbs feel heavy. Throughout the endless night of questioning, I had told them everything I knew about Ryan, about Alex, about the strange conversation in the park. Everything except the text message Alex had sent just as they arrived. That I had kept to myself. A small betrayal that weighed on my conscience. The lawyer Alex had promised arrived an hour into the questioning. A sharp-eyed woman in an impeccable suit who advised me to answer only the most basic questions and deflected anything that might implicate Alex in Ryan's death. The officers clearly suspected a connection, but they admitted they had no evidence of foul play in what appeared to be a simple case of a driver losing control on a rain-slicked road. I hadn't heard from Alex since that truncated message. His lawyer refused to discuss his whereabouts, saying only that he was addressing the situation and would contact me when possible. Lily would wake soon, and I would have to tell her about Ryan. Not that he had been part of her life, but she deserved to know that her father, however absent, was gone forever. The thought made my throat tight with unshed tears. Not for Ryan himself, but for the complicated grief of losing possibilities, even ones that might never have materialized. My phone rang, startling me. A blocked number. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Ella." Alex's voice was strained, lacking its usual control. "Are you all right? Did the police—" "They just left," I cut in. "Your lawyer made sure I didn't say anything damaging." A heavy sigh came through the line. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. This isn't what I wanted for you. Did you do it?" The question burst from me, direct and unvarnished. "Did you have Ryan killed?" "No." The answer came immediately, with a conviction that made me want to believe him. "I swear to you, Ella, his death was an accident. But you threatened him," I pressed. "You scared him into dropping the custody case." A pause. "Yes, I told him to back off, made it clear there would be consequences if he continued harassing you. But those consequences were financial, legal. Not this." His voice softened. "I would never bring that kind of violence into your life, into Lily's life." I leaned against the window frame, suddenly too tired to stand. "The police think otherwise. The police always look at me when something happens in this city," he said, a note of bitterness creeping in. "But they won't find evidence of wrongdoing because there isn't any. Ryan lost control of his car on a wet road. A tragic accident, nothing more." I wanted to believe him. Despite everything, despite the danger and complications he represented, I wanted to trust that the man who had held my daughter so tenderly, who had looked at me like I was something precious, wasn't capable of cold-blooded murder. "Where are you?" I asked. "Somewhere safe," he replied vaguely. "I can't come to you right now. It would only bring more scrutiny, but I've arranged for Victor to be nearby if you need anything." The thought of being watched, even for protection, made me uneasy. "Alex, I don't know if I can do this, any of this. My priority has to be Lily." "I understand that," he said quickly. "And that's my priority too, your safety, your peace of mind." He paused. "But I'm asking you to trust me, Ella, to give me a chance to prove that who I am doesn't have to define us." Before I could respond, there was a noise behind me, the soft padding of small feet on the floor. "Mommy?" Lily stood in the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Who are you talking to?" "I have to go," I said into the phone. "Lily's awake." "Ella, wait," Alex began. But I ended the call, setting the phone aside as I knelt to embrace my daughter. "Good morning, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded against my shoulder. "Is Alex coming back today? He promised to finish the dragon story." The innocent question made my heart ache. "Not today, sweetie. He had to go away for a little while." Her face fell, and I realized with a pang how quickly Alex had become important to her. "Will he come back?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But right now I need to talk to you about something else, something important." I led her to the couch, gathering her onto my lap as I searched for words to explain death to a 5-year-old. As I began to speak, tears filling both our eyes for a man she had never known, I made a silent promise to myself. Whatever happened next, whatever I decided about Alex, it would be with Lily's well-being as my only consideration. 3 days passed with no word from Alex beyond brief text messages, assuring me that things were being handled and asking about our welfare. I took a leave of absence from work, using Ryan's death as the reason. though in truth I was hiding, from the police who still drove past our building occasionally, from the reporters who had somehow discovered my connection to both Ryan and Alexander Dragovich, a person of interest in ongoing investigations. On the fourth day, as Lily napped after an emotionally exhausting morning at Ryan's funeral, attended only by us, his new wife, and a handful of co-workers, a knock came at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Victor's impassive face. "Ms. Mercer," he said when I opened the door, "Mr. Dragovich requests your presence." "I can't leave, Lily," I said, gesturing to the bedroom where she slept. Victor nodded, unsurprised. He anticipated that. "The car is waiting when you're ready, both of you." An hour later, with Lily still groggy from her nap, we were being driven through the city toward the waterfront. Passing the market where Alex and I had shared churros just a week ago, the car continued beyond the renovated warehouse district to a more secluded area, eventually pulling up to a modern building with glass walls overlooking the water. Victor escorted us through a private entrance and up an elevator that required a key card. When the doors opened, we stepped directly into a spacious penthouse apartment with breathtaking views of the harbor. Alex stood at the window, his back to us, his posture tense. "Alex!" Lily broke free from my grasp and ran to him. He turned, his face lighting up as he crouched to catch her in his arms. "Hello, little dragon," he said, using the nickname from his stories. The tenderness in his voice made my throat tight. When he stood, Lily settled on his hip. His eyes met mine, cautious, searching. "Thank you for coming." "Victor didn't make it sound optional," I replied, though we both knew I could have refused. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a seating area. As Lily explored the apartment with wide-eyed curiosity, Alex explained the situation. The police investigation into Ryan's death had concluded it was indeed an accident, a combination of high speed, wet roads, and alcohol in his system. Alex had been cleared of any involvement. "But there are other matters," he continued. "Investigations into some of my business dealings. It would be complicated for you to be associated with me right now." My heart sank. "So this is goodbye?" "No," he said firmly. "This is a proposal." He outlined his plan, a house on the coast, far from the city, where Lily and I could live in comfort and safety while the legal issues were resolved. He would visit when possible, but we would be removed from the scrutiny, the danger, the complications of his world. "You want to hide us away?" I summarized, a flash of anger cutting through my exhaustion. "I want to protect you," he countered. "Give you space and time to decide what you want, without pressure from me or threats from outside." I looked at Lily, who was enraptured by the view of boats in the harbor, then back at Alex. "And if I say no? If I decide I can't be part of your world, even at a distance?" Pain flashed across his features. "Then I would respect that decision, provide for you both anonymously, ensure your safety from afar, and," he swallowed visibly, "and let you go." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Whatever else Alex might be, criminal, dangerous, morally ambiguous, his feelings for us were genuine. "I need time to think," I said finally. "Of course," he agreed immediately. "Stay here tonight. The building is secure and I'll be nearby, but not imposing my presence." That night, after Lily fell asleep in the luxurious guest bedroom, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights and water beyond. The past 2 weeks had transformed my life in ways I never could have imagined, bringing danger and loss, yes, but also passion and possibility I'd thought forever beyond my reach. The balcony door slid open behind me, and I knew without turning that it was Alex. He stood beside me, not touching, respecting the distance I'd requested. "What are you afraid of, Ella?" he asked softly. "Truly?" I considered the question, wanting to give an honest answer. "That I'll lose myself in your world. That Lily will grow up surrounded by danger and moral compromise. That I'll look back one day and not recognize the woman who chose this path." He nodded, accepting my fears without defensiveness. "And what do you want? If fear were removed from the equation?" The question pierced straight to my heart. "Connection," I whispered. "Security, passion. A partner who sees me, really sees me. I turn to face him. I want Lily to have a father who would move mountains for her, who tells her stories about dragons and believes she can tame them. Alex's eyes shimmered in the dim light. I can be that man, Ella. I won't pretend my past isn't dark or that my business is entirely clean. But with you, with Lily, I see a future worth changing for. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, feeling the familiar warmth of his touch. I'm not asking you to decide everything tonight, he said. Just say you'll come to the house by the sea. Give us time to find our way forward, on your terms. As I looked up at him, this powerful, dangerous, tender man who had upended my carefully constructed life, I realized that my decision had already been made. Not in this moment, but in a series of moments, when he held Lily as she slept, when he listened to her stories with genuine interest, when he looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. Yes, I said softly. We'll come. His smile transformed his face, years of hardness melting away as he pulled me gently into his arms. Against the backdrop of city lights and distant waves, I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with complications and potential dangers, but for the first time in years, I wasn't facing it alone. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The single mother, the crime boss, and the little girl who had unknowingly brought them together with a dragon story and a dream of Disney World. The stranger I had impulsively kissed on a rainy evening had become the man I was choosing to build a future with. Complicated, dangerous, beautiful, and entirely ours.